titled Tired of Walking the Floor? Survey in Half the Time. And this webinar is about the AirMagnet Survey Pro application. Some of you are already familiar with this and some of the great features built into that. My name is Rick Murphy, and I just want to tell you, I really like the title, Tired of Walking the Floor. I recently came in from site surveying a hospital. It was a hospital with 2 buildings, 9 floors in all, 2 remote sites, and it was a 3-day survey. And I have a company that does professional services, and they called me in off the bench to go out and fill in for them. And I greatly appreciate the amount of time and effort and just labor it takes to go out and do these surveys. So for me, to have the chance to come and talk to you about a way that you can maybe make your site surveys more efficient and maybe work a little smarter rather than a little harder using these wonderful products that we're about to talk about, and also in just planning your surveys in general and using some efficiencies that we can talk about as we go through here, this was a great opportunity for me. I appreciate you taking the time, spending, in many cases, your lunch hours to come out and listen to me, and I hope to make it worth your while. Okay, so to begin the webinar, a quick outline. I'll do a brief introduction and talk a little bit about the products. Then we'll focus in on this one product, AirMagnet Survey Pro. And then we'll go into a little more general and discussion and talk about the different types of surveys there are. Some of you may be surprised to learn that there's more than one type of a site survey. I'd also like to share some of my experience with you. And for better or worse, I've been around a long time, and I've been in the industry for quite a while. And I think that one of the things I bring to the table is that I've seen a lot and have been able to participate in a lot of different wireless installations over the years. And it's my goal to kind of share some of that stuff with you. Maybe you can save some time. Maybe you can do a better job than I did in some cases by learning from some of my less than efficient manners and methods that I used. And if that makes you a better engineer, then that's what I'm here for, and that's what I enjoy doing. So we'll talk about the types of surveys. Then we'll talk about ways to get more accurate site surveys. So that's the plan. First, a little bit about myself. My name, as I said, is Rick Murphy. And I've been in the industry for quite a while. I've actually been networking since the early 80s, but I've developed, went into wireless networking about 1995. I did my first indoor Wi-Fi site survey in 1997, and that was for the Colorado State Capitol building. And that was interesting. Just to share a little bit with you, I'm sitting here looking at a couple of the pieces of equipment that I used back in 97. The equipment was frequency hopping spread spectrum. It was 802.11, I call it 802.11 Prime, the very first version of 802.11. And it was manufactured by a company called Alvarian today, but in those days it was known as BreezeCom. And these are BreezeNet frequency hopping 802.11 access points and station adapters. Why I'm sharing this with you is because when I was preparing for this presentation, I took a look at these and I remembered my first site survey. The way we did site surveys in those days with this equipment, long before AirMagnet was around to help us out, was to set up an access point and to take one of the station adapters, which was actually a desktop unit. It would sit on top of the PC or near the CRT, as we had in those days, and had an Ethernet connection that went in the back of the PC. So that was the station adapter. This was actually long before PCMCIA and PC card was in vogue. So the way that we did the site survey was there were 3 LEDs on the station adapter under a label that said quality, and the LEDs were marked L, M, and H. That meant low, medium, and high. And we knew that if we had one of the LEDs, the L on solid, that meant that we had a 1 megabit per second connection. And if we had 2 of the LEDs, the L and the M, that meant that we had a 2 megabit per second connection. Well, BreezeCom back in those days had also an optional proprietary 3 megabit per second connection rate, and that was the third LED. So we would set these station adapters in different places and see how many of these LEDs that were lit up. That was my first experience doing site surveys. I can tell you right now that if you just started in Wi-Fi and you have AirMagnet Site Survey Pro, you're already a better site survey and engineer than I was back in 1997, because this tool that we're about to talk about has so many features, gives you so many visualizations and ways that you can tailor, tweak, and tune the way that your customer is going to be able to use that network. It's just amazing to me. And that's why we need to have these training sessions and why we even have to have classes on these to go in and look at all the functionality and features built into these products. So you might have guessed that I'm a fan of AirMagnet and have been using the products. I was just looking out on my AirMagnet site where you can go to look at your licenses, and I actually have AirMagnet Enterprise and AirMagnet Wi-Fi Analyzer licenses that go back to 2004. So kind of surprised me that I've been using the products that long, but I don't begin to profess that I know all of the features and all of the different functions built into AirMagnet. There's just so much in there that you can use, and such a wonderful product line too that all kind of fits together. So as I said, I'm a fan and a user, and I can tell you that my engineers use AirMagnet products in the field, and we have great results. And now let's go, now that I've given you this high-level glowing report, let's go in and talk about some of the features. And also, I'm not afraid to mention some of the things that give us some trouble in some ways that you can work around those too. By the way, I wanted to mention this real quick. I know Sarah mentioned it at the beginning, but this is kind of a closed conference. They're letting me do all the talking so that we can move through it at a fairly rapid pace, but that doesn't mean that we don't want to get your feedback and we don't want to get your questions. Please feel free to use the WebEx Q&A box. Shoot me any questions you have. We will get to it at the end of the presentation. I'll try to leave some time there, and I'll try to answer as many as I can in the allotted time. And any questions that we don't get to, I'm going to ask you to forward those into a link that I'm going to provide, because we really want to get your feedback and questions. And I would like to see these webinars continue in the future, and any questions we don't actually get to, or some that we do, I'd like to kind of build that into the next presentation. So you can help us out by contributing in that way. So I appreciate it. Thank you. Moving on to the next slide. So what's new in survey? Well, okay, so as I mentioned, maybe you don't know of the features that used to be in survey, so knowing what's new might not be seem like a big groundbreaking thing. But just to kind of fill you in, remember that little scenario I talked about where we used the LEDs to indicate whether we had a low, a medium, or a high strength signal? There's really a lot more to it than that today. And the reason there's a lot more to it is because 802.11 has progressed. In the old days of 1997, people were just thrilled that they could get wireless access to places that either had no type of connectivity previously, or they could make it more convenient to them to pick up their equipment and maybe move to the lunchroom, cafeteria, that type of thing, pick up their email and things like that. Well, those days of low-level expectations have kind of gone away. Here we are in the new millennium, and people who are using Wi-Fi today expect it to actually work, and not just work for simple connectivity issues like print jobs and email and web browsing. Now they're expecting it to be able to deliver high-quality voice, high-quality video, and now with the advent of 802.11n, we're expecting major high-throughput data transfers. And all of that is expected to work together. So the expectations of the users are driving our industry in such a way that you as the engineers and the surveyors and the diagnosticians, the troubleshooters, and the general Wi-Fi techs, you really need these tools to go out and be able to help you figure out what's going on. Because number one, Wi-Fi is invisible. Number two, it's all around us, and it is unlicensed, which means that users from all other areas, neighbors, even some intruders, may be using wireless in your same arena, and you just all have to coexist. So we need to be able to visualize it. How do we visualize it? We use these tools like Wi-Fi, like AirMagnet Survey Pro. So let's take a look at what's new in Survey. The first thing, and what it led to the title of this conversation, is that now built into the Survey utility is the ability to use multiple wireless station adapters and simultaneously. And what's earth-shaking about that is it allows you to do multiple surveys at the same time with one walkthrough. So as I told you, that walkthrough I took through the hospital, I try to stay in shape, but I don't care if you don't do this every day. If you just even take a couple-week vacation, come back and hit the pavement again, walking is effort, and you don't want to have to do it any more times than possible. So one of the first things that can help to reduce the amount of time in performing your site surveys is to have multiple station adapters inserted and be able to perform some of the different types of surveys all in one pass. Now, it's not a 100% solution because, unfortunately, some of the surveys require more than one pass just by their nature. So we'll talk about what those are. But even with those, having multiple network interface cards, station adapters inserted is going to at least reduce, in some cases by half or more, the amount of time that you have to perform these duties. So simultaneous multiple site surveying capability is a big feature and can really reduce the time and effort. And that's one of the biggest expenses is human time on the ground performing the operations at a customer site. It's not just about the surveyor being out there. Think about this. Not only is the surveyor being paid to be out there, but think of the disruption to the standard operating procedure of the organization that you're surveying. So while you're out there surveying, let's say as a hospital, just as an example, you're surveying, and no matter what you do, you as the surveyor will be a distraction to the ongoing operations. You have to you have to pass through, you have to work around, you have to have an escort possibly to open doors. Every third person you come to wants to know what it is you're doing. Every fifth person that you come to thinks that you're doing something that you probably shouldn't be, and we should probably call security. So we have all of these things going on. Think of the expense. And now if you have to do that a second time or a third time, first to do a passive survey, second to do an active survey, third to do an active survey with performance testing, then wouldn't it be great if you could do all of that in one pass, or maybe two passes at the most? And that's what this ability to do multiple surveys in one pass is all about. But in addition, one of the biggest labor-intensive operations that has to happen with a site survey is going out and gathering the data is only the first part. And it's not always necessarily even the first half of it. So what we do is we go out, we perform the physical site survey walkabout, gather our data, perform a passive survey, possibly an active survey, others, maybe we do spectrum analysis while we're out there. Now we come back to our desk and we have to merge all this information together into the whole point of this job, which is to provide the customer deliverable, which is the site survey report. The site survey report, how many hours do you spend on this site survey report? It's the bane of just about everybody I've ever talked to who does site surveys, including my own engineers and myself. It's the sitting down and cutting and pasting and applying and labeling and typing up reports and figuring out analysis and figuring channel plans and things like that, putting it all into a customer report that will be in a format easy to read, understandable to a layman, and just nicely presented. Because in today's venues, in today's world, I guess you would say, people aren't going out and just looking at how many LEDs are on a station adapter anymore. Your competition and the state of the art is to provide these very nice heat maps and well-organized, well-thought-out site design plans that are substantiated with the results of the site survey. So the customized reporting templates, now we have these features built into AirMagnet that will allow you to not just work all in Word, but you can do a big portion of the report right in AirMagnet, generate that out, and if you want, you can go in and customize it, and in many cases, you can leave it right in that format. Although many of you will be old school like myself, you'll probably want to export that out to an RTF or Word doc and then import it into Word, put a few final touches on it. For instance, you may want to throw in some digital photos and some labels and some superscripts and a few things like that. All of that can be easily done now with a customized reporting template. So that will help speed things up greatly, and has in my case. Also now we have coverage maps that allow us to check the actual throughput. So I'm going to have a few more words to say on this. I won't go into too much detail here right now about throughput and coverage and things like that, but you should know that, one sec, that we normally, in the past, I'm sorry, I'm looking over to my right at another screen. In the past, when we went out and did a site survey, normally the customer is paying us to go out and make sure that we are able to provide coverage of their facility with wireless signals at a certain signal strength level. That has been the equivalent of what I like to think of as my 3 LED site survey that I told you about from the old days. That's kind of old school. And what's funny is, even though we know that we are going to be needing better information from our site surveys, it still is the most popular form of site survey out there. That's the coverage-only site survey. That's where let's just make sure we've got enough access points everywhere so that everybody can get connected. Now, the problem with that is this. It's not hard to get coverage everywhere. What's hard is to get quality everywhere, and there's a big difference. Just having signal doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have quality. And the reason for that is this. As you know, in Wi-Fi, we have 2 bands, 2 unlicensed bands, and most of our equipment will support either of these 2 unlicensed bands, the 2.4 gigahertz or the 5 gigahertz. 2.4 gigahertz was kind of the original one and has become so firmly grounded that it's almost impossible for to move everybody out of the 2.4 gigahertz. But we also have an alternative, and that's the 5 gigahertz unlicensed band, which has much, much more spectrum available than 2.4. So most of our difficulties come because our customers insist and our vendors insist on producing equipment that operates only in the 2.4 gigahertz band. Now, in the 2.4 gigahertz band, there is only enough bandwidth to support 3 non-overlapping channels, that being 1, 6, and 11 under FCC regulations. If you have a European Telecommunications Standards Institute regulations to follow, then you actually could go up as high as 13 channels, 1 through 13. The problem is you still can only fit 3 non-overlapping channels even in that range. So the importance of using non-overlapping channels is highlighted in other places and other classes and takes a little more time to discuss than we have time right now, but I'd love to get into that with you in another venue if we can at another time. Just take it to the bank that you can only have 3 non-overlapping channels in 2.4 gigahertz without causing collisions to your network. So we've got 2 types of interference issues that actually 3 types of interference issues that we have to deal with, mostly in 2.4 gigahertz. The first one is naturally occurring interference that comes from non-modulated carriers such as microwave ovens, cordless phones, things like that. So that's unintelligent noise, we can refer to that. But then we also have 2 types of intentional interference. And those intentional interference are modulated carriers that are being used by other Wi-Fi devices or other protocol carrying types of spread spectrum devices like frequency hopping, things like that. So we might see co-channel interference, that's one term, when we actually have multiple users on the same channel. Let's say you've got an access point on channel 6. You've got several users associated to that access point. Your neighbor nearby also has an access point on channel 6 and has several users. Well, the way it works is only one gets to talk at a time on that channel, so that means that they have to contend for the channel. But another form of interference is the adjacent channel interference. And I still see this, so apparently we haven't gotten the word out yet. I still see it all the time where somebody decides to use a channel in between the standardized non-interfering channels of 1, 6, and 11. You might see somebody on channel 3 or channel 4. And the problem is that adjacent channel, actually, when they transmit, we will occupy the same bandwidth that would be used by channels 1 and channel 6, causing more interference. Well, how in the world do you tell that? How can you see that? The only way you can see that is to be able to visualize that on a coverage map, a heat map, and Site Survey Pro can do that for you. More on that coming up. And it's good news to me that we now have 64-bit operating system support. So I'm a recent convert, just am moving over to Windows 7, and I still have a lot of PCs on XP, but Windows 7 is great. It seems solid, but I really like the 64-bit OS, and much, much cleaner and faster. Unfortunately, not every single piece of software out there runs in 64-bit, so it's good news that Survey does. Now, let's talk about multiple surveying features. So on this slide, you see a picture of a laptop with 2 network interface cards. These are 802.11 ABGN Proxim devices, and Survey is able to support 2 of these, which allows us to do several different things, which can really reduce the amount of time, the number of walkthroughs that you have to perform. So, for instance, you could use one of these network interface cards to perform an active survey while the other one is performing a passive survey and do one walkthrough. You could set one of these network cards to be surveying in a passive survey on, let's say, 2.4 gigahertz with a reduced channel set, and the second network interface card could be doing also another survey in the 5 gigahertz on possibly the indoor channels, the indoor 4 channels or something like that. That allows you to go at a comfortable walking speed and assures that you're not going to miss any data. So it's very, very important. There are some other examples that we're going to come up with in just a minute, but you can see by the little chart and graphic on the bottom, in the old days, we would have had to perform 2 surveys, one to do a passive and then follow back around and do an active if you had a single adapter. By using multiple adapters, one pass, twice as much data. Very helpful. Very, very efficient way to support your leg time, I guess we'll call it. So, as I mentioned, customized reporting. Reporting requirements are different for everybody, and almost every organization has their own customized way of providing the customer deliverable, and they want it to look like a document that comes from them. So it'd be nice if you could go in and tailor the customized reporting as close as possible, or at least get all the information in there that you want to present and have that output to a format that you can then bring into a Word template or something like that. And now we can do that with the customized reporting feature, and that will save you a huge amount of time. If you've just been doing cut and paste, I think you're going to find that the customized reporting feature will speed things up tremendously. Here's that other key feature that I got off on just a minute ago, the wireless LAN throughput coverage map. So this is basically for 802.11n deployments, and more on that coming up, how important that's going to be to our future. But just know that it's important to your customers to know not just that they have signal, but in the near future, they're going to want to be able to be confident that they have throughput, that they have quality, that they have security, that they have 802.11n spatial streams operating and that they're getting the network performance that they've paid for when they've upgraded to an 802.11n system. So this is all going to be important. How can you verify it and validate it? These tools allow you to visualize and present an accurate portrayal of the Wi-Fi activities that are happening within their facility. And no other way can you do it. So it's very, very important. Okay, now I said that the new AirMagnet survey will support multiple adapters, and there's several ways you can do about it. Several ways that you can go about this. So first of all, AirMagnet recommends the use of the certified multi-adapter kit. So they make a kit for you that you can purchase, and no fuss, no muss, plug it in and go. Simple as that. So the kit includes a 5-port USB hub, and you can get 2 Proxim 8494 ABGN USB adapters to go with that. You can also get that with 3 Proxim 8494 ABGN adapters. Let me explain why. So in survey, we can support 2 USB let me rephrase that. We can support 2 station adapters at the same time in survey. However, if you have AirMagnet Wi-Fi Analyzer, you actually can support 3 adapters in that product. That's a different product, and we'll discuss that in another webinar at another time. Just to mention, though, if you were purchasing the multi-adapter kit and you see the 3-station adapter version, the reason why is because that would be more appropriate for the Wi-Fi Analyzer product rather than the survey product. Okay? And it can be purchased in different modes for world operations. Now, you don't have to purchase this particular adapter. The software will support generic right out of the box. So if you already have Survey Pro 8.0 or higher, you can use a multi-port adapter and several different NICs. The licensing, you have to have one that's licensed, and the others don't necessarily have to be licensed, but you do have to have, of course, the one license for the application itself. And then you're able to use the second NIC to perform the survey. So other than that, it's all built in. Now, this is where I could spend a lot of time, so I'll try to move through it fairly quickly since we only have roughly another half hour to go. So, pre-deployment surveys. There are different types of surveys, and knowing which survey you're doing and which one is most important is almost an art anymore. So you will talk to folks, and possibly you yourself, you may have some very strong opinions on this. I'm not going to try to tell you or convince you of my opinions. My opinions change. There was a time when I absolutely believed that the only way that you could build a network properly was to go out and do a pre-deployment survey and then purchase the equipment, install the equipment, and do a final verification of the survey, and then come back every few months just to verify that your neighbors haven't started something out, built a new Wi-Fi network that is corrupting your channel plan. So I have changed my opinion a little bit. There's a new paradigm, I guess you would say, a new way of doing surveys that I used to think was kind of, what's the word? Not, I don't want to say useless, but because I never thought it was useless, I just didn't think it was worthwhile. But I've completely changed my attitude, and that type of survey is not on the list that you see here, and it should come right above typical AP on a stick bullet, and I call that the predictive site survey. A better word for that is propagation modeling. That term is used in other forms of wireless technologies. We use propagation modeling outdoors for WiMAX and for point-to-point and point-to-multipoint. But the same idea applies indoors too. And here's why I've changed my mind and why I think it's so important, and it can save you so much time, is if you were to take the AirMagnet Survey Pro and add the planner feature that goes with it. I believe that's an extra license. I'm not sure about pricing or anything like that, but just if you have that planner feature built into it, you can save yourself literally hours of time on the field walking about by knowing where you're going to place your APs. Even if you're doing a single AP on a stick, when you get out there to do the physical walkabout, now by having preemptively designed where you're going to place these access points and then performing the actual physical measurements to verify that the walls are what you thought they were and the multipath is where you think it will be and things like that, you have saved yourself literally hours of time. So I'm now a big proponent of using the planner feature to first go in and preemptively design where your access points are going to go, even if you're going to go out and do a physical survey with AP on a stick. Now, one other feature that you can get, the thing about AP on a stick, and I think I have another supporting slide coming up on this, when you take a single access point out today and you place it, measure it, move it, you lose the interference, the co-channel interference that access point has given off, because when you move the access point, you would have presumably have devised a channel plan, and you will change the channel of the AP at the next location, and then you'll perform your verification or your pre-deployment verification of that access point. The problem is you no longer have the original access point to show co-channel interference effects. Okay, and so it works okay up to the first 3 APs, but then in 2.4 gigahertz, when you get to the 4th AP, you start to use those non-overlapping channels over again, and at that point, you want to be able to predict and verify and also to visualize where the effects of co-channel interference are going to become a factor. So you can do that in Planner. You can do it in Survey Pro by moving the access point and changing the channel up to a certain point, but then you're going to have to come back in during analysis and simulate the effects of the co-channel. So here's a little tip. If you go out and do your physical site survey portion, I'd recommend, if possible at all, that you take at least 4 APs on a stick and rather than 1. And I know that's a lot, but think about it. You've got channel 1, 6, and 11, and you can start moving those around and simulating the effects of co-channel interference. It's better, if you ask me, to be able to go out and place all of the access points in their locations that you have devised and designed within Planner, light them up, put them on the channels that you've decided on, and then survey either AP at a time, SSID at a time, or the entire network at a time with a passive survey. So that's another way to do it. So I mentioned this term, typical AP on a stick. You've heard that term. You've probably done it. It's by far the most popular and almost the only site survey that people expect and want. Now, these things I've told you about, here I am trying to tell you how to save time or help you learn ways to save time, and I'm saying, yeah, but you should have more than 1 AP. That's another time saver, though. By placing more than 1 AP out at the customer location, you will find that you'll have to move a little bit less, and you'll be able to save time during the analysis portion too. So if you prefer to do the single AP on a stick, like 99.99% of the engineers out there today, join the crowd, and nothing wrong with that. It's just that keep that in mind, that it's going to be a little more difficult. You'll have to work a little harder to simulate the effects of the co-channel interference, and also in some cases adjacent channel. Okay, so you can survey to a single access point, and then you can merge, as you move the AP on the stick, you can take do a separate survey and merge those together. Now, you should always merge these all together at some point or another. But when doing the survey to the single access point, here's something that often gets kind of swept under the rug. In many cases, people will survey only out to the area of their target signal strength. So if you have gone into a customer location, the customer has told you, well, we're going to be using voice over IP devices, so we're going to have handsets, and the manufacturer recommends that we have a signal strength of neg 67 dBm everywhere in the location, and we want to be able to see at least 2 APs, a primary and a failover AP, from any location. So So you've got your basic requirements to go out there, and that's pretty much what most people will survey on. But the problem is it's not hard to get the neg 67. If you stop measuring there, you miss a big part of the information you're going to need to provide full analysis, and that's this. The signal doesn't stop at neg 67. So when you walk out from the AP and you see that your signal strength has dropped to neg 67 dBm, and you say, okay, I can stop walking now and go back and move the AP. Wrong. Here's what you should do. Go a little bit further. It's not just the neg 67 that you're looking for. Don't forget that that signal is going to go out further and can possibly interfere with another AP in the same channel. So you want to go out further, far enough at least, to be able to determine when does that signal drop below the threshold at which my wireless client adapters can safely ignore that signal. And in case you didn't know, that number in the 802.11 standard, that is set to around neg 85 dBm, but it's not forced on the manufacturers. So manufacturers may or may not respect that number. It's a good working number, though. So we typically would say the lowest level threshold, neg 85 dBm, pretty much anything lower than neg 85 dBm, our client adapters can selectively ignore that signal and know not to try to associate to that AP or try to listen to it. They can pretty much disregard it, okay? You may want to fudge that number either up or down, but when you survey, the thing to take from this is don't just go out to the neg 67 threshold, go all the way out to, I recommend out to neg 85 dBm. Now, I know that's more walking, and here I'm trying to save you walking, but you know what it is? It saves you another trip back out there to find out what's wrong with that network. So it does save you time in the long run, okay? Okay, so be sure to survey to the edge. Follow all the active survey rules. So we've got some special rules for active surveys. I'll go over a couple of those with you coming up. And I probably should explain the difference between a passive survey and an active survey as well. So two main types of surveys that we have inside of AirMagnet Survey Pro are passive surveys and active surveys. A passive survey is just a listener. So you are walking around and you are gathering all of the radio energy from all of the transmitters within range above a certain signal level, okay? And that information is being gathered, put into a database, and tagged, sorted, and available for your scrutiny at a later time. That is the most important survey of all. If you only can have time to take one, be sure to take the passive survey and make sure that it works properly. You get the full coverage of everything in the area. Now, that survey will tell you who your neighbors are, what channels are on, what SSIDs they're using, all kinds of other information as well. And that will give you a good lay of the land of what's out there. Okay. But what it doesn't tell you, what's your actual throughput. So here's one of the anachronisms that we find in Wi-Fi. And the sad thing is that the end users are starting to find this out. So if someone is using Wi-Fi on a laptop PC sitting at their desk and they move their mouse over their connection icon down on the system tray, it pops up and Microsoft will pleasantly say, oh, you have a 54 megabit per second connection. Now, that's not too bad. A user isn't going to worry too much about that. And if it drops down to 48 or 36 megabits per second, the user probably doesn't pay any attention to that. If it gets down to 1 or 2, they might have a concern. With 802.11n, these same users are starting to see that little label pop up and say you have a 300 megabit per second connection or a 270 megabit per second connection. Then the user says, you know, that's really fast. Why is it taking so long for me to send this file? I better call tech support. And now, pow, the IT department gets involved. Okay, here's the reason. Because signal strength does not necessarily translate to end user throughput, and that's where the issues are starting to show up. We need to be able to carefully acquaint our users with the difference between actual throughput and signaling speed. Those are two different things. Now, we go into great details in some of our other classes that where we have more time to explore this, and I'd love to chat with you more about that coming up. But it's because of these features that we need to start being able to do the active surveys to prove whether or not we have not just coverage, but actual good quality and signal throughput. So, moving on. So after you have done the pre-deployment survey, you may want to also do a verification survey. Now, some people would say that you absolutely must do the verification survey. Some people would say you absolutely must do the pre-deployment survey. Let me put it this way. You absolutely must do one or the other of the physical surveys. Now, you can get away with not doing the pre-deployment survey if you use Planner and do a predictive survey or propagation modeling, and then go out and validate it. But, you know, I just would not feel comfortable doing only a Planner prediction and then having them purchase the equipment and putting it in place where my planner said to put it, and not validating, not verifying that. Some people will do that, and some customers will request it, but you need to make sure they're clear. You know, we can't really tell a lot of things at our desk that we can tell when we're out there in the field, and so we should always have this verification survey just to make sure that everything that we think is going on really is going on. Now, in order to perform the verification survey, we have a feature built into AirMagnet that is head and shoulders above just about anything I've run across yet, and that's the AirWise intelligent expert system that's built into several of the AirMagnet products. And with this AirWise utility, we can go in and put several different types of requirements and say, now I want you to watch wherever I walk and compare what you're seeing to this database of requirements. This customer has said that they need to have a neg 67 dBm minimum AP signal strength. They want to be able to see coverage from 2 APs on different channels at the same time. They will only tolerate interference down to, let's say, neg 85 dBm. And they have to support a minimum data rate of, say, 11 megabits per second, things like that. And we also, we're going to say we only want to have up to maybe 15 users per access point, per SSID, all these things. Put all of that into AirWise, perform your survey, and then come back and during the analysis, simply click on the different features and you can tell where you've succeeded, where you've failed. And where you've failed, just go out and fix it. Once it's fixed, verify again, and you're done. So these are parts of the product that work with whether you're using a passive survey or an active survey. So keep that in mind. There's also another survey too, and that is the active IPerf survey. I'm so glad to see this because for so many years it's been difficult to assess what my actual user experience is going to be. So we can go out and do a passive survey, and that tells us what kind of radio energy is surrounding us here and which channels would be the most beneficial for me to use in this network. The active survey tells me, okay, what type of connectivity do I have and what type of roaming can I expect and things like that. But the IPerf test, the active IPerf, actually allows me to model and simulate user experiences. So by going to IPerf, rather than just the active survey, which indeed sends data, but only over the Wi-Fi portion, by putting in IPerf, we place an IPerf server somewhere on your wired network. And then we do IPerf testing, either UDP or TCP sessions, directly back through that IPerf server. So where you place the IPerf server can give you a hint of what the actual user experience is going to be. Let's say that they will be doing VoIP. You place the IPerf server back where the VoIP concentrator is going to be, and that gives you an indication of what the path is going to be like all the way across the air to the AP, to the controller, off onto the wire, over to the IPerf server, which we've placed nearby to the VoIP server, and back. And that really tells you a lot. And this is good information that you can use in your reports, and you can also use this to refer to at a later time in case you have trouble spots that you have to diagnose. In addition, we have the ability to add GPS surveys to any of these types of surveys. So we can take GPS. It's built right in. Now you have to have a GPS device with its own driver, but once you've got that, you can tie GPS into your Survey Pro application. Obviously, maybe not so obviously, so let me just, you would only use GPS outdoors. I want to make that clear. So GPS doesn't work too well indoors. So this is something that you would use for an outdoor site survey. Let's say that you have a container farm. Let's say that you have a large auto lot with Wi-Fi, areas that you want to provide coverage, perhaps a municipal stadium or something like that, and larger areas that would be recognizable under GPS. You don't have to click anymore. So you don't have to say, I'm here at this point, click, I'm here at this point, click, I'm here at this point, click. GPS does that part for you. In addition, once you've gone out and gathered the data and tagged it with the GPS coordinates, which is done automatically, then with a single click, you can convert this over to either MapPoint or Virtual Earth or Google Earth and have a very, very nice, instantly recognizable display for your end users to view. And here's an example of what that would be. This survey was taken and converted over into Google Earth, and what a nice display. Everybody can relate to that. Now, I want to make sure you're clear. This is for Wi-Fi. It's not for point-to-point, point-to-multi-point types of surveys. This would be for access point-to-client types of surveying. You can also include spectrum analysis. So if you were to purchase or come across either the former AirMagnet spectrum analyzer hardware known as Spectrum Expert, that was a PC card form factor, or if you were to purchase the new Spectrum XT USB, then either one of those, set up, licensed, properly working, can be integrated directly into into Surveyor Pro or even Wi-Fi Analyzer. So that's another time saver. So many times you're doing the site survey. The site survey is using a Wi-Fi NIC card. The NIC card is only able to recognize Wi-Fi. You need to see raw energy, unmodulated interferers, and things like that. The only way to see that is with a spectrum analyzer. And by allowing you to insert this and bring it right into your Survey Pro reports, that is another time-saving feature for you. In addition, AirMagnet has another feature called VoFi. So Voice over IP over Wi-Fi survey utility, VoFi, if enabled and accessible, can also get call quality information while you're doing a single pass-through. You can be doing a single passive survey, possibly a multiple survey with active survey going. You could have GPS integrated. You could have spectrum analysis integrated and be picking up VoFi information off the air to determine MOS, call quality, roaming information, and things like that, all with one pass-through. So very helpful, I think. And in addition to that, it's important going forward that we all realize that 802.11n is a game changer. Number one, 802.11n reaches further. It goes further, it goes faster. It even has some effect on legacy devices. So we can expect different signal strength ranges, different signal strength thresholds, different throughput margins, and if you're not prepared for that, then you might be surprised at how that can cause additional adjacent and co-channel interference coming up. So we need to plan for that. Just putting in 802.11n as a plug-and-replace type of an installation may not be the best way to upgrade a network. Might want to go in and do a little planning in the Survey Pro Planner feature to see what effects 802.11n is going to have on your infrastructure before you send out the RFP, things like that. But then go through and verify it. Now, with 802.11n, you're going to want to do an active survey as well. A couple of good things. If you're doing a survey for 802.11n, you don't have the equipment yet, one thing you can do, survey for 802.11a, 5 gigahertz, because that will give you a pretty good layout for your access points. And then when you place them in, go back in and do the verification with active survey. That will allow you to check the MCS modulation and coding scheme levels as well as the modes, what type of protection mechanisms get enforced, and verify that only 20 megahertz channels are used in 2.4 gigahertz. If you are installing 5 gigahertz 802.11n, feel free to use all the 40 megahertz channels you want, but don't use them in 2.4. Bad idea. Okay, and you can combine all these things together. So you can do different combinations of surveys, actives and passives, two passives, passive on 2.4 and 5. You can do IPerf, and that's an active IPerf with a passive survey. Add your spectrum analysis, add your VOFI survey, add your GPS along with all that. And you want fries with that? That's about the only thing that's not included. So what a great bunch of features. So that brings us up to the 7 rules for accurate site surveys, and this is a great feature. One of my counterparts, one of my good friends, has put together the 7 rules for accurate site surveys, and we have this in detail available for you as a white paper. Please see that for more details. I'm just going to hit the high spots here. For accurate site surveys, be sure to calibrate your drawings. Set the proper channel scans. You don't want to enable all of the 200 possible international channels, because if you scan at 250 milliseconds, a quarter of a second apiece, it's going to take about 50 seconds for you to round robin back to that first channel all over again. Think how far you might have walked in 50 seconds, and anything that happened on channel, let's say channel 11 while you were up on channel 52 doesn't get seen. So you want to intelligently set your proper channels. That's another nice feature. If you can set one of your station adapters in 2.4 and one on 5 gigahertz, you can be sure that you're not missing anything but still maintaining a good walking speed. Set the snap rate properly, and that is the guess range is how far we're going to extrapolate or interpolate outwards from the point where we take the information, and the snap rate tells how often we should automatically take snapshots. One thing that's important with AirMagnet, capture both sides of the walls. So if you're on one side of a partition, a wall, drywall partition, AirMagnet has no way of knowing there's a wall there unless you go over to the other side and do a survey on that side. Then it can say, oh, okay, we had a drastic drop from this AP, and that must have been due to something. So that's the only way it can show these different levels. Okay, make sure you click accurately. Try to be a little precise when you're clicking. I know it's hard, especially when you're looking up, watching for gurneys coming by and infusion pumps passing and nurses carrying important things. But you got to keep one eye on the tablet, one eye ahead of you, and another eye on your path, and try to click properly. Don't kind of walk through a swimming pool, and don't leap off a balcony. You should try to keep that as accurate as possible. It looks more professional and gives you better results. Remember to always do a passive survey. Active surveys also have their own rules, and the biggest one here is if you're going to do an active survey, make sure that's passive survey. This is good. On a passive survey, there's no point in doing a passive survey if you filter it down to your own SSID. The whole point of passive survey is to see all your neighbors. So don't just keep that open. Get all or any. And here are the active survey additional rules. Capture the data from all the access points. Capture out to the edge. Be careful adjusting roaming aggressiveness. The application, the survey application is better at setting roaming aggressiveness than most station adapter cards and utilities. So you really want the survey to represent what the end user is going to see and give the best information about that. So be careful how you adjust inside Survey Pro. Always merge all the active surveys before you merge with the passive survey. Okay, so merge all the actives together, then merge that with the passive survey. That's the best way to do it. Okay, and analyze. That is the biggest part of this. This is where all the features and functionalities come through. You went out to the site, you gathered this data, now you create the customer deliverable. And here's some of the features. Use that Airwise expert system that's built in there. That is a lifesaver. It's great. And I guess the one thing here that I would mention is when you go into survey and you've completed the surveys and you start to analyze this, one of the biggest mistakes you want to avoid is when you click on the display icon and you see this heat map being generated, that default heat map is showing you everything. And remember, that's not our focus. Our focus is what is the client device, how is it going to be reacting to the signal that we put out there. So no client adapter out there will ever be on more than one channel at a time. So what's the point of looking at a heat map that shows the combined effects of all of the channels on all of the bands? What you want to do is go over to the left while on the display panel. Go over to the left and deselect everything except check one thing at a time. Maybe you want to check channel 1. Maybe you want to open up channel 1 and look at all the APs that are on channel 1. Maybe you want to deselect all but one of those APs. So that's part of the analysis feature. You've got this incredible power, but to use it wisely, you need to know that channel 1 may have several APs, and each one of those will have a different footprint on the map. And so you want to go in and be able to analyze that properly, okay? Maybe you turn off the 5 gigahertz. Maybe you turn off SSIDs. There's another tab called SSID. Maybe you just want to see where's your SSID providing coverage. And by doing SSIDs, you can deselect or select whatever you prefer to see. So I think that's the biggest thing for that. Okay, well, folks, this was a quick hour. I'll tell you, that went by too fast. I'd love to have more time to spend on this. As you can tell, I kind of hit the tops of the waves. But I hope that there was something of value there, something to make it worthwhile giving up your lunch hour and spending it with me and AirMagnet today. If you have further questions, please put those into Q&A. I'm going to take a few of them, but as you can see, I know a lot of you have to get back to your desk. So I'll take a couple of these Q&As, and then we're going to close it out, and I will ask you to forward those on to this address, info@airmagnet.com. And we'll see if we can't get those all answered. In addition, any that seem like they need more, perhaps we'll cover that in a later update of this. Here are some additional resources for you. And AirMagnet web support site, My AirMagnet, is where you can go in and look at your current licenses. We have the new AirWise community forum, and hope to see you out there. Here's my information. If you would like to shoot me an email directly, love to hear from you. I noticed a lot of you are old friends and in some cases past students. So I'd love to hear from you and see what you think or what you thought of today. So thank you for that. Let me take a quick look at the Q&A and see, oh yes, we've got a number of questions here. So gosh, folks, I know I'm not going to be able to get to all these. A couple of good questions. Wow. Let's see. So are multiple licenses required for the multiple station adapter scenario presented early? I believe only one license is required, and then the multiple stations as well. So the license actually allows the application to begin, and it doesn't license the hardware itself, more the application. Think of it as kind of a dongle, if you will. So once you've fired up the application, you should be able to support the multiple station adapters. A couple more on that. And the photo showed the 2 Proxim radios on a Mac. Do you have a Mac client? I don't believe so. I'm gonna send that one. I'm gonna ask tech support to pick up on that one because I think that would have been running in a VM. In order to support that, but I could be wrong. I'm not terribly knowledgeable about Macintosh. I'm sorry. Are you suggesting we walk a triangle in the rooms, not the full perimeter? You know, I saw that slide too, and I'm not recommending that. The thing with AirMagnet, there are some utilities that you could do that with, but with AirMagnet, if I understand the algorithm the way I think I do, you're better off to walk the perimeter. And based on the signal propagation assessment setting that you have put in there, whether you've set that to 15 feet or to 20 feet, you should probably walk in swaths that are that wide. Okay, so in a typical room, I'd walk in, I would follow the perimeter of the walls, because that's where I want to, when I go to the next room and follow the perimeter, that's what's going to allow AirMagnet to adjust for the degradation or the attenuation of the walls themselves. If it's a larger room, let's say it's 50 feet wide or something like that, you may want to take another path or two down the center, just based on whatever you set your signal propagation assessment level to. That's how closely you should walk. But I would always recommend going around the perimeter of the walls, not just in a triangle like that picture showed. I agree, that is a little confusing. And for dual Wi-Fi card use, do both cards have to be the same make and model? To the best of my knowledge, that they do not. So you can use, as long as you have drivers for them, they should work. Okay. Oh, here's a great question. We could, folks, these are great questions. I wish I would have had more time just for these. But I've been seeing a lot. Wayne says, I've been seeing a lot of 802.11n 40 megahertz channel bonding on 2.4 gigahertz band. What is the standard for channel bonding in 2.4 gigahertz band? So here's the way it went. When 802.11n was coming down to the final voting, we were in the committees making the final votes, and they almost outlawed it. So they almost said we're not going to allow 2.4 gigahertz channel bonding. But then at the very last minute, IEEE, you know, they really have no enforcement capabilities, and they don't really think that's their job, and that's what they said. It's not really our job to tell people what they can do with this. That's Wi-Fi Alliance job. So what we will do is we'll say we don't recommend that you use 2.4 gigahertz 40 megahertz channels, because there's only 3 22 megahertz non-overlapping channels in the whole band. And if you use 2 of them for channel bonding, that only leaves 1 unadulterated channel, or 1 non-interfered with channel. And so we are all supposed to know this, and we're all supposed to inform everybody, look, 2.4 gigahertz, do not use channel bonding. Use that only in 5 gigahertz. And that's the official rule. Unfortunately, it's not enforced, and people are doing it. And they're doing it to the detriment of the others around them. So when you enable 40 megahertz wide channels, the interference that comes off that is actually much greater than 2 20 megahertz channels. So let's all take that opportunity to try to get people, if they want to use 40 megahertz channels, let's do that up in 5 gigahertz where we've got tons and tons of bandwidth that's not being used. Can I do a 2.4 and 5.8 gigahertz survey at the same time too using, and Paul, you can do 2.4 and 5 gigahertz survey at the same time using a single NIC, it's true, but what you do is you scan through. So you're going to scan through your 2.4s and then up into the channels that you've selected in 5, then round robin back down to 2.4, up into 5. What makes it better to use 2 NICs in that case would be a smaller channel set and quicker rotations through the channels, if that's clear. I hope it is. So if you've got 1 NIC looking at only 2.4 gigahertz channels, 1 NIC looking at only the 5 gigahertz channels, you can feel free to move at your standard walking pace, knowing that you're accurately catching all the data that's out there. Has anyone reported Windows 7 64-bit service pack 1 breaks the Proxim on USB adapter drivers? A little bit specific for me, Forrest, but I can tell you that, let's see, I am using Windows 7 64-bit. Do I have a Proxim? I believe I have a Proxim USB, and so far I haven't had any problems with that. But let's let the tech guys answer that. They would know for sure. Okay. And let's see. I think I've kept you long enough. Folks, there's many more questions here, some good ones too. I sure would like to address these, but I think we're going to have to, I'm going to ask you to forward those over to info@airmagnet.com, and let's see if we can get some in-depth answers to that, just because I don't want to overstay my welcome. Once again, I appreciate your time. thank you very much for coming out here, and look forward to talking to you in the future. Bye.